The camera I use is an Hasselblad 501. I like this camera for two reasons. First of all, because it's a square format. And for me, the square format is extremely important because it brings the attention into the photograph. And the second reason why I like the camera is because I know it now so well, it has become almost like an extension of myself. I know what the camera can do and cannot do for me. Photography for me means fundamentally finding the right time, the right light to take the best I can from the subject which is in front of me. I think that photography is not a choice, it's a duty. Because the moment that I frame a subject, I make a decision, which is ethical. I'm going to face a set of circumstances which I need to grasp. And the fact that I choose one frame instead of another one, moving the camera from one side to another one, for me is an ethical choice. Photography for me is about waiting. Waiting as almost a philosophical condition. You wait for the right time because you must have the profound respect for what is in front of you. So I shoot very few, I make very few shots. Actually, the more I photograph, the less photographs I take, in this sense. And when I shoot, I trigger the shoot, it's going to be that photograph. I don't crop anything, I don't change any images, I don't use Adobe Photoshop, because for me it would be unethical. When I go to a new place, I never take the camera with me. And the reason of that is because I needed to establish a sense of a communion, correspondence, feeling with what is there or what was there. Later comes the camera.
I'm an architect who dedicated most of his life to international cooperation sector, especially working for UNESCO in the Middle East and Africa. Federico's photography can be defined as a slow photography, or probably extreme slow photography. Sometimes I was asking him after a day of campaign, and he was telling me, today was a very, very fruitful day. I shot a lot, and I was expecting a high number of photographs. And he was telling me, well, I took 2 photographs. And for me it was quite extraordinary. But then slightly I understood that his photography needs time. Sometimes Federico was telling me that he was in front of a potential photograph, what he could be in the future a photograph, and he would stay in front of it the whole day. I think that Federico is waiting something else. He does not wait only the light, he waits, he's waiting, as I said, probably an atmosphere to happen, but the atmosphere, the right atmosphere, is possible only when he can establish a deep relation with the subject he is photographing.
The Land That Remains is a book about the vanishing culture and heritage of Palestine. During my traveling, I met very few people because Palestinians cannot travel free because of the occupation of the land by the Israeli army. So the absence of people show the condition which they're living now. The land that they owned has been swept away, has been taken away. We may talk about the conflict, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, but we don't talk about what is behind that in terms of the culture, the heritage of a place which is so old, so ancient, at the same time so alive today. In my photography, I receive images from what exists. And my duty as a photographer is to make this image into a stable photograph, to render them as a photograph. A photograph is an ongoing time, is an ongoing moment. I try to grasp the duration of things, the permanence of things which are there, especially in a land which has been so rich with the history since the very beginning. That's my duty as a photographer, to render the images as a stable photograph which preserves the memory of the history and the time of the land. I look at things because I want almost like to rescue them from the passage of time, from history. That's why the sequence that we have created in this book, I see like a flow, because each one expands the meaning, the significance, the feeling of the other one. And that's what I want people, I want them to feel and to listen to the photographs.
It's very difficult to say which one I like, because I like all of them, but there are some pictures that are more emotional for me. For instance, this photograph, it is the sub-factory of a friend of mine, actually the family. A few meters away from this place, we started to renovate a caravanserai that was a project that lasted for the entire period I lived there, which means 10 years.
A journalist has said that, and this is quoted in one of the texts, it's very difficult to enter Palestine. At the same time, it's very difficult to leave Palestine. I was crossing the checkpoint, which is between Jerusalem, Bethlehem, and an Israeli settlement called Arona. As usual, they asked my document, and then they asked me where I was going. On the United Nations map, there is the name of a village called Al-Numan, which today has become Mitzmordi. The name has been taken away, as if the village does not exist anymore. The memory has been taken away. So the officer asked me, why do you want to go there? I needed to go there because I'm on assignment to photograph the land. And he replied to me, there is nothing to see in that place. The fact that somebody tells me there is nothing to see is almost like a provocation, because as a photographer, my job is to look at things and to record these things. So I went to the village and I photographed the woman. There are only 20 people living in Al-Numan. It's the last photograph of the book. And I could photograph the lady. I took only one image of this lady. And the way she looked at me in that moment is like she was the custodian of all the land of Palestine, almost like an icon of what's happening there, and then we don't see. Photography is about feeling. It's also about waiting. I waited for a long time in Nabi Musa. It was the 1st of January of 2009. And I took a photograph of Nabi Musa, but I went there several times. And I remember that I was waiting for the light, the morning light, sitting on a dune at 6 o'clock in the morning, because I wanted that. So it took several visits before I could reach what I wanted with that light in that moment. There is only one moment when you shoot, and that's the moment, and not another moment.